Hello everyone.
Hello.
Rajni, in the first 10 years of Indian Link, which were the stories which caught your eye?
There were so many, Pawan. I think one of the first that comes to my mind is when India entered the nuclear club, 1998.
Exactly. And there was total controversy in Australia. The Australian media, the politicians went berserk, and the Indian government, the Indian representatives here could not get a word out as to why was India doing so. In fact, there were comments which were made by the Foreign Minister of Australia, Alexander Downer, who said India is a country which wants to develop a nuclear device to escalate tensions in South Asia and no doubt make a statement about wanting to enter the firmament of great powers. So what did India do then? We had the Indian High Commissioner who told Indian Link, we have taken note of the Australian action in recent days and in course of time will determine whether what we will need to do in the pursuit of a national interest. So that was a firm comeback from the Indian government back to Australia at this time. But what did that trigger along?
It did. We said at that time that it's made the Indian community come of age. And I think very early after that nuclear incident, the Indian community in Sydney showed that they can do it. There was a cartoon in The Australian depicting Ganesha, the most loved of the Hindu gods, with a cigarette in one hand and a tin of beer in the other. And it had the Indian community out in the streets.
First time, 100 people who marched in Surrey Hills in protest, and they got the Australians to apologize. But it also encouraged a lot of Indian Australians to come to the forefront about other issues. Pauline Hanson had just emerged, and she had made that famous statement
that Australia is being swamped by Asians.
And we had a group of people from Indian origins who hit out straight at Pauline Hanson. So that was the first time India came on its own. But we found that there were still issues of racism going on, and we did major reports on the issue of racism. And what we found at that time was that Indians and the Chinese community were the ones which had the most issues when it comes to racism.
Pawan, we also made it a point to keep in touch with the major events that were happening in India. And the elections in the year 1998 was the first time that BJP came to power, and just before we did a little survey here in Australia about what the Indian community thinks. And
we love surveys, don't we?
We love surveys, and we found that they were overwhelmingly in support of the BJP. And a month later, it was borne out because the BJP swept to power in India. So I think it sort of reflects that the Indian community here is very much in camp with what's happening back home.
But then we had the problems in Kashmir when Kargil took place, and the Indian community was in deep sorrow about the news which they were getting from India. And our job was to do reportage on what had happened over there. In fact, we also worked hard to raise funds for the sacrifices made by the Jawans from India, and we collected money so that we could send it to support the war
Families
efforts
of the
fallen over there.
We've always loved, Pawan, we've always loved reporting on the flashes of brilliance that come through from the community, and one of the earliest was Dr. Hari Kapila. He helped in the first ever successful hand transplant. And of course, there hasn't been any stopping our medical professionals since then. So it was wonderful to be reporting on the kind of work that they do.
We love it. We love picking up the heroes from our community, and they become role models for the rest of the community. But then there are other stories which we also looked at. One was a controversy between a mushroom picking farm where the women of Indian origin working there were told they couldn't wear the Mangal Sutra. So we dived deeper into the story to come up with what actually happened over there. Again, the community was emerging on its own. And while they were doing so...
We just had Dussehra, and we've burnt down the effigy of the demon king Ravan. And we do it every year now. But when we first did it, we called it a cultural landmark. It was quite an important event, absolutely headline worthy for us.
And now, 24 years down the track, these festivities have grown more and more, where they have not only 2,000 or 3,000 people coming there, but 20,000, 30,000 people over there. Rajni, tell me about this story.
Yeah, so we have often claimed, Pawan, that we try and represent every major sector of our community, and the LGBTQ is favorite segment of our community because they suffer racism in multiple ways. And this was way back in 1999. We were still campaigning and advocating for them, and we continue to do so.
And the headline over here was, the fundamentalists in India may have been running a campaign against homosexuality, but the community at large are more tolerant. The more things change,
the more they stay the same.
I remember at this issue, there were shopkeepers who threatened to throw our paper out.
I remember that.
If we did not take a withdrawal on the statement. We did not do so. In fact, we told them that we will distribute our papers outside the outlets, but what we believe in, we will stand. Yes was the word then, yes is the word now.
Absolutely.
One of the things which Indians love anywhere in the world is sports. So these were our sports topics, where we had Tony Gregg, and he had the foresight to say this 25 years ago, that India is a powerhouse of world cricket. And that's proven so true.
That was another good story, Pawan. When Sachin Tendulkar was invited to say happy birthday to the great Don Bradman, that unfortunately was the only photo we got from their meeting, but at least we got one. So it was great to see. Sachin was due to get the Arjuna Award on the very same day, so he had to do some major string pulling to be able to be here in Australia, in Adelaide, to wish Don a happy birthday.
And then, as we almost came to the end of the decade, we went colour. And what a wonderful way to go colour than to have a cricket story on the front pages with all the blasts from the past. And there was an extra colour in our life when we went colour for the very first time.